Hello, welcome to Jewish Museum Milwaukee Museum Moments. My name is Ellie Gettinger, and I'm the Education Director here at Jewish Museum Milwaukee, and we are delighted to be able to join you today for this very special museum moment. I know I say that each week, and we're in the cycle of the Yamim. Yamim means days in Hebrew, and last week we commemorated Yom HaAtzmaut, Yom HaShoah, the Day of Remembrance for the Holocaust. This week marks Yom HaAtzmaut, the day of remembrance, the Israeli Independence Day. And so in thinking about Israeli Independence Day in Milwaukee, we actually had a story that is such a great Milwaukee story that we couldn't imagine not telling it. It's a story that we've been to actually in the past year. We've talked with our community Shliach Oria to talk about Hanukkah in Israel. And really, when you think about the ways that Milwaukee has continued to engage with Israel, that this story, the story of connection between the Shaliach or Shlicha and the community, is one that builds a bridge. So this is 50 years of history that we're going to explore fairly quickly. And I'm really excited to be able to share this story with y'all today. So Shlichut comes from the root of the word. It's Shin Lamed Het, and it means like to send, Shalach. You could send, if you think about Purim, we do Shalach Manot, that means to send gifts. And so Shlichut is basically emissaries, or this ambassador program. And it has been running since the 1960s. And it's part of a bigger process. Each year, the Jewish Agency for Israel sends between 1,500 and 1,700 Israeli emissaries, Shlichim, that's the plural, from around the world to strengthen Jewish identity and connection to Israel. And so they partner in all sorts of different ways. You see people at camps, you see them on college campuses, you see them in synagogues. And in Milwaukee, we've had a community shliach who kind of organizes all of these activities. We've had other emissaries in other ways. In particular, right now we have a shliach at Hillel Milwaukee on the college campuses, and we always have these kinds of yearly representatives of youth through the Shin program, and they come from our partnership region, which someday I'm going to do a museum moment about our partnership region. This is a picture of Yom HaAtzmaut as it normally is celebrated, with a march, with people coming together with some sort of food experience all together. And since we're still in the realm of COVID, that's not possible this year. But I believe this is Shliach Nir Barkin, who is celebrating and bringing the community together for Israel. So it's not just about this single day, though, about Yom HaAtzmaut, that the program is connected. It's about finding those connections throughout the year in all sorts of tangible and interesting ways, about building bridges between individuals, and about creating opportunities for people to learn about Israel. And if people are interested in traveling to Israel or moving to Israel, being the conduit to help support those opportunities. Here are three of our Shlichim from the 2000s. And the one in the middle is Neely Lamdan and Nir Barkin, and I think it's Iftach. We're going to have to go to my next slide to get his name fully, but sorry, it's Iftach Shahar. And each one of the people who becomes the shliach becomes like an active kind of leader within the community, and each brings their own interests to bear. For example, when we had Karen Weishaus as our shliach a couple of years ago, that she had done our shlicha a couple of years ago. Shlicha is the feminine, shliach is the masculine form. She had a background as a curator and had all sorts of arts engagements that were part of her program. Right now, Oria, our current shliach, is an amazing sports enthusiast. So he's really connected on a sports level with lots of people, both in terms of understanding Israeli sports and making sure that, just falling in love with American Milwaukee sports while he's here. The first shliach was a gentleman named Oriel Yisraeli, and he came from a kibbutz. And this is the Chronicle article that appeared. And really, there's this sense within this article that he's going to be working from an office, but his primary responsibility, as dictated through this article, is that he's going to really help people who want to be part of Israel programs. And in this case, they're presenting one called a service program called VIP Volunteers in Israel, and connecting with colleges. And if you think about it, this program, he's the first person, it's right after the 6-Day War. There is unprecedented enthusiasm in being part of Israel and visiting Israel, and especially amongst youth. So he's really going to be the bridge to help build those connections. He's going to make sure that it's possible for people to get there and that they understand all of the red tape that might exist in either immigrating or just participating in a program. It's interesting as you go through the Wisconsin Jewish Chronicle and look at the articles related to Shlichim over the last 50 years. You find all sorts of different ways in which they connect. One that was really interesting was from the Shliach Yoav Silbert, who was the Shliach during the Yom Kippur War. And he actually went back as a reservist and fought in the army, and then wrote an article or was interviewed for an article for the Wisconsin Jewish Chronicle about his experience, and it talks about how 2,000 people died during the Yom Kippur War in that month, and expressed the kind of feeling of what it was like to be an Israeli. So a lot of times the role of the Shliach is to convey that feeling of what it's like to be an Israeli to an American audience, to better understand, to build empathy for those experiences, so that there is this real sense of personal connection. Those personal connections are real. You see it in interviews and discussions, in the way in which there's ongoing partnership, in the way that people celebrate together. That if there's a wedding of one of the children of Shlichim when they are much older, that you'll see Milwaukeeans traveling to attend those simchas, those celebrations. So there is this real sense of connection, because it's not just about coming to Milwaukee as an individual. You're coming to Milwaukee with your family, and you're being part of the community. You're living in the community, and you're doing all sorts of things, from opening your sukkah up to the community, to hosting events and programs that are not just out there in the community, but potentially in non-COVID times in your house, that you're sharing your experiences with the broad community. And while either the husband or wife is generally the shliach or the shlicha in the community, the entire family becomes part of the emissary process. We have over 50 years of Shlichut history in Milwaukee, and this is a complete list of all of the people who have served in our community, and it is the longest continuous history of any community. So it's really an amazing story, and I think each one of these people have impacted the community in diverse and meaningful ways. The evolution of Hillel on campus came to be because of one of the shliachs. There's been an evolution of the way we deal with youth groups, the evolution of how we talk about Israel. And each one of these people brings their own particular interests and connections to bear as they're sharing their lives with us. So as I said, there's this idea of building tangible connections and then creating community programs, of which there's so many different ways in which people do that. And I think really, if you look at the achievements of 50 years of Shlichim in the community, is you really do get to see the diversity of Israeli society and connections. And it is all about this, helping people understand the diversity of Israeli experiences and identities, and bringing that on a person-to-person basis, and building those connections so that people are better able to talk and to connect with Israel. One of the Shlichim, Shliachs, David Raz, says, the truth of the matter is, at the end of the 3 years, we really realized how lucky we were to be chosen by Milwaukee. This was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, not only for me, but for all my family. And, there are people, there are such important connections that come out of these experiences. Our current shliach is a gentleman by the name of Oria, who we had the pleasure of talking about Hanukkah in Israel with. Oria Roth is a fabulous communicator, fabulous, and has had inordinate challenge pushed on him in this past year, that he went from being someone who's supposed to engage community person to person, build connections, build community programs, and now he has to do it all via Zoom. And so he's created a huge slate of things around the Israeli election that just happened, around the American election, around all sorts of opportunities in the past year, and has really found ways of connecting with filmmakers, with artists. And this week we get to see his work with Yom Ha'atzmaut. This community celebration takes place Sunday, April 18th at 2 p.m. It will be virtual. So the picture you see here of 2 years ago, 2019 at the War Memorial Center, that is not happening. We don't have lots of people in a room, but we want to have that metaphysical feeling of lots of people in a room. So feel free to check out Israel Center at Milwaukee. We'll put the links in the chat. And we hope that you'll be able to join us for this community celebration. And kol hakavod to all of our Shlichim over the past half century for adding to our community and building such fabulous connections. I hope in the chat you guys take time to ruminate on the impact that these people over the last 5 decades have had on your life and our community. Thank you so much for joining us for today's museum moment. As always, thanks to Robin Cohen, our generous supporter who enables these to happen. And we also want to thank our friends at the Israel Center of the Milwaukee Jewish Federation and my fabulous intern, Griffin Cusick, who did the research for this project. Thanks so much and have a wonderful day.